I'm going to just like start a store and make a white man apology stationery, because if I have to see iPhone notes one more time, I'm going to hurt someone. This is juvenile font. It's like Comic Sans for some reason. And you want to just have an earnest apology? You, Justin Timberlake. It's so stupid.
Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III, a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Fertel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
And I'm Aida Osman. I'm a TV writer and alleged comedian.
Let's get into it.
It has been quite a week for white men, doing the absolute most. First, to get it out of the way, Donald Trump was impeached for the second time, and he did not get convicted.
I'm hoping he gets a third impeachment, comes like the Ingrid Bergman or Meryl Streep. Like, wow, 3-time impeachment winner, Donald Trump.
Not shocked at all. At this point, it's hard to even be invested in watching the impeachment trials because, you know.
And I did not.
I've never done that. Yeah, I didn't know.
Because this was sort of like a foregone conclusion, even more so than the original one, right? You know, because I feel like it gets so exhausting to watch quote unquote political theater play out on television and in the news and the media, because so much of it always seems like a foregone conclusion. Mm-hmm. Like people telegraph exactly what they're going to do. It's the same reason why you don't want to like sit there and watch the verdict come in for police officers who've like shot and killed black people, right? Like we know what's going to happen. Yeah. We know the jig. It's been up. And
up and it's stuck.
If it's up, then it's up, then it's up, then it's stuck. The thing that actually did shock me was a lot of the anger that people had at the Democrats this weekend. And then I was like, fine, let me go look at this. And then I can see why people would be mad that the Democrats did not agree to call witnesses. Because, you know, there is the idea that dragging this out when we already know the conclusion and we already, you know, just want to get to COVID relief is not a good idea. I mean, I'm not saying that like I'm going full neoliberal and defending the Democrats, because I think that they make a lot of stupid decisions. But I do think that the impeachment of Donald Trump is the last thing on Americans' minds right now. The majority of them. Like people who can't pay their rent, people who can't eat right now, people who are going through medical struggles like and need fucking checks from the government do not give a fuck if this bitch can run for office again.
Well, if it had actually happened, I imagined it would feel good even for those people. But I mean, I'll say this about the whole trial. If you spend even a second watching Mitch McConnell tease the idea of doing the right thing, just sit there and start applying the clown makeup to yourself. What are you doing with your life? Get along. Come on.
And then
go read a book. Go walk outside.
Then his vote to acquit, and then after giving this like Real Housewives reunion monologue.
Yeah, inherit the wind over here. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, are you done? I really am saddened that even with the majority in the Senate, we still have to hear from Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
Now I know how conservatives felt whenever Nancy Pelosi got on a mic.
Just stomping on continuing to speak. You know, I was surprised though by there was 7 Republicans that voted to convict Trump, and that's 7 more than I would have expected. Ben Sasse was on that list, like a notorious Nebraskan piece of shit. So it was shocking. But he's still uninterested, generally uninterested.
Yeah, and Mitt Romney, you know.
Oh my God, our hero. The moral compass of exactly nobody.
The only thing I want from Mitt Romney is for him and his wife to join the cast of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Right. I
think I would enjoy that.
I want to see what's in that tabernacle. Yeah. Okay, we got to move on to other white men. A lot of other people have been blowing it up.
Yeah. So the number one enemy of Keep It. Mm-hmm. I know that there are many enemies of this podcast, but the number one enemy, Justin Timberlake.
What? Does that track?
I think it does.
It is long standing because he had the Super Bowl performance, he had the Man of the Woods thing, you know.
Okay. These are pre-Aida, but carry on.
Yeah.
I do want to know. Tell me all the
Can't stop the feeling counts as a threat to me.
The impending release of a Trolls 3 soundtrack
that's very true.
feels like terror, like we're in an Ari Aster film. But Justin Timberlake this weekend finally, quote unquote, apologized. I put in quotes apologized because this is far from any apology that any sane person would accept. He apologized to Janet Jackson and Britney Spears. Finally. This is, of course, on the heels of the New York Times documentary that we talked about last week, with all the clips of sort of how like Justin was very misogynist towards Britney in the relationship, laid a lot of the blame on her for their breakup and like would make jokes about like fucking her on radio shows. It's basically a piece of shit to Britney Spears publicly in the media and had nothing to say while she was being vilified. He put on Instagram this statement that we know was written by his publicist. I've seen the messages, tags, comments, and concerns, and I want to respond. I am deeply sorry for the times in my life where my actions contributed to the problem, where I spoke out of turn or did not speak up for what was right. I understand I felt short in these moments and in many others benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism. I specifically want to apologize to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson, both individually, because I care for and respect these women, and I know I failed. I don't think you care for or respect either of these women. And my point about this apology is that it implies that he's only just now seeing the messages and the tags and the comments, right? People have been writing articles, myself included, about how this man owes Janet Jackson some goddamn respect for years. She went on Oprah talking about how she felt disrespected and betrayed by a friend. We all remember that time where he was like comparing being black and white, and someone quote tweeted it with, you need to apologize to Janet. And then he responded with, oh, you sweet soul.
Also, I'm going to just like start a store and make a white man apology stationery, because if I have to fucking see iPhone notes one more time, I'm going to hurt someone. This is juvenile font. It's like Comic Sans for some reason. And you want to just have an earnest apology? Fuck you, Justin Timberlake. It's so stupid.
I also think like the reason it was one of the reasons it was delayed all these years, this apology, is he knows how bad it looks it being so late. Like it just, it feels ridiculous to be like, oh, you know what? 18 years later, I am coming around to the idea that career ruining spectacle for the other person on stage with me was, shitty.
I believe you, Lewis. But speaking of 18, in 2018, when he did go ahead and go do the Super Bowl without Janet, or like even comment on the fact that Janet wasn't present, that would have been the perfect time. That would have been the ideal time. So I don't even know if I buy that. If I buy that he gave a shit or continues to get, even if he gives a shit now, like not to mention he has a song with Michael Jackson. That on Love Never Felt So Good is out and doing numbers, and like that also would have been a wonderful time to talk about it.
Destroyed his sister's life, but you gotta take this dead man's vocals and remix them in the lab for a single. Come on. He has had ample opportunity to make a statement, and I really just think it's because there were no consequences before. And now I don't know what he thinks that Palmer is gonna get nominations or something.
Right.
Was he finally worried about his check and his money because the New York Times did a documentary about Britney Spears? The Justin thing goes to the heart of why I think a lot of the quote-unquote cancel culture conversation is so asinine on the internet, because he put his apology on Instagram. And if you go and look at that page, the amount of people who are commending this man for finally speaking the truth, or writing, this is the best apology I've ever seen from anyone, and thank you for being a man and owning up to this. Shut the fuck up. Like it is so
you want to like him. It's
childish.
Awkward for fans who like defend him anyway to give the correct amount of to give the correct response to him, which is like, well, I guess you finally did it. You
Yeah.
know, as
Celebrities,
opposed to,
too.
we're proud of you. Yeah.
The wildest fan response is when you see someone go, thank you for finally addressing this. Like, I've been a fan and knew that like you had this in you. I'm like, if you're really that much of a fan, you didn't really care.
Yeah.
You were just tired of having to defend him to black people on the internet and Britney fans.
Mm-hmm.
What's awkward about being a fan often is if you're obsessed enough, that person's identity is wrapped up in yours, like they're in your Twitter bio or whatever. And that means you are endorsing everything about them. So I'm sure it's just awkward for these fans in general, and they're glossing over that.
I am a non-endorsed Barb, okay?
Right. Same.
I like the music. I like the beats. I like the memes.
I separate the art from the artist, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I certainly do.
I have to quietly. I'm in the corner.
I certainly do listen to my Doja Cat songs produced by Dr. Luke and keep it moving. Charisma Carpenter came out in support of Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in the Justice League film, which Joss Whedon did reshoots on after Zack Snyder left the film. Ray Fisher has accused Whedon of gross abusive behavior on the set of Justice League, and there's been an investigation by Warner Media. There's been interviews with other actors, and people have sort of like voiced their support for Ray Fisher or not voiced their support, etc. Well, Charisma Carpenter, as who we all know as Cordelia Chase from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my queen, came out this week and stood in support of Ray Fisher by announcing that Joss Whedon was abusive on the set of Angel and created a toxic work environment. What followed was a lot of Buffy and Angel stars and writers coming out and saying, yeah, fuck Joss Whedon. He ain't shit.
It's nice to formalize that, I guess. We've had this like slow drip of Joss Whedon news stories over the years, and I guess I had never really thought about it, but we didn't get the opinion of someone like Charisma Carpenter. And what can I say? It's horrible because he's just so associated with, in particular, Buffy, who, I'll speak for just some queer people I know, is like the character of all characters, like the number one, the person you were most obsessed with, who got you through adolescence. Like what Daria was to me, I guess, is Buffy was to these other people.
To me,
and it's just,
you know,
and you,
it's my favorite television show. I rewatch it constantly. Buffy meant so much to me growing up, and it's so sad to see that like this man who was so much associated with like the feminism of Buffy, right? You know, was a piece of shit. And if you follow Charisma Carpenter's career, you sort of know that she has insinuated that like Joss Whedon was awful before. We did know at least that during Angel, she got pregnant and was written out of the show. And so she has alluded to a lot of these things before, but this was the first time that she ever truly voiced specifically what he did to her. And it was so great, you know, to see her, you know, like finally speaking up for herself. And it was great to see a lot of the other castmates sort of defending her and saying that they agree with her. You know, Michelle Trachtenberg, Amber Benson, Emma Caulfield. Sarah Michelle Gellar, my queen, unfortunately wrote a very tacky Comic Sans notes app that was a Taylor Swift. I would like to be removed from this narrative, and I don't want to be associated with Joss Whedon's name for the rest of my life without really addressing anything. Otherwise, you know, I was happy with a lot of the responses, and we had sort of had inklings of this, you know, because like his ex-wife had come out with her statement before about how he was sort of awful to her, but there'd really been no sort of like accountability for Joss and his behavior of like people saying that like he enjoyed making writers cry in the room. You know, there was that story about like James Marsters, who played Spike on Buffy, about how like he was the second vampire that Buffy was in love with on the show, and he didn't like that James was like becoming popular, and like Joss like confronted him once and like pushed him up against a wall and was like, hey buddy, like mad at him for being so popular. And James
like
was
a
like,
beatnik bully.
And it's like, you're the one writing the show.
He's
If you
done the
don't
job.
like me, kill my character. You know, it's so insane. And I think that we should have canceled this man after Avengers: Age of Ultron, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But
I think we could have gone as far back as that weird Much Ado About Nothing he did.
oh God, yeah. It's just sad, to see it. But I'm glad that people are talking about this now. And you know what? It doesn't really change how much Buffy changed my life because, so many people were involved in creating this show who is not this man. Mm-hmm. And I think that Buffy fans for a while have come to this reckoning of taking ownership of the show themselves. It's a bit J.K. Rowling in a sense, or H.P. Lovecraftian, where like these sort of awful people created fantasy worlds that took on lives of their own. Buffy is ours, not his anymore. I think there's more white men who are in the hot seat this week. Lewis, you and I are somewhat Bachelor Nation.
Also, I would like to interject and say I am by force Bachelor Nation as well because I like to have something to talk to my aunts about. So
okay.
I'm on board, especially with with Matt James and they brought a nigga on the show. You have to watch it.
Chris Harrison this week decided to step up out his frame and defend a current front runner on this season of The Bachelor, Rachel Kirkconnell. We just saw her having an amazing week with Matt on the show on Monday's episode. And then it came out that she is kind of racist. She has 2018 photos from an antebellum plantation themed fraternity party. She spoke out against cancel culture. And Chris Harrison, while talking to Rachel Lindsay, the first Black Bachelorette, decided that it would be cool to defend this girl. He said, well, Rachel, is it a good look in 2018 or is it not a good look in 2021? Because there's a big difference. Basically being like, it was okay for white Rachel to do this antebellum theme shit in 2018 because 2018 isn't the same time as 2021. What?
That's what he thinks the point of, I guess, last summer was. Actually, antebellum theme parties were a little out of line.
Yeah, well, we were anti-BLM, so nobody knew any better.
Whoa!
Yeah,
you're like the Riddler. Jesus. Yeah.
But 3 years ago was not that long ago. And you know what the unfortunate thing is? These photos of these plantation parties or these sorority get-togethers, I'm not unfamiliar with. This is still occurring in colleges all across the South and Midwest. And it's an eerie thing to observe. And they're proud of it and they enjoy it and they really do engage in the culture. And it's not going anywhere for a while.
It is so funny watching someone whose entire brand has been, sort of like, I'm appealing to every part of middle America, right? And being a host, and then deciding that, in order to appeal to the white fans who like this girl because she's the front runner on The Bachelor this season, I need to say that it's okay that she was, skipping around cotton gins. After he said this to Rachel Lindsay, he then apologized and said that he was going to take some time and step away from the Bachelor franchise for a bit. I think he just needs to go in general because he's been doing the show for too long, and a lot of other Bachelor contestants have come out and said that they think Chris Harrison sucks.
Yeah, before this, I wanted more for his career. Girl, you are bogged down. Go do something else. I wonder what this after the final rose ceremony is going to look like now if he's not hosting it. But I will, ABC, I'm available. If you are interested and need someone to stir up chaos with these bitches, I'm ready.
Speaking of other things that got canceled this week, the Indianapolis Museum of Art was up to no good.
Not really the art capital I think of, but okay, go ahead.
They had to apologize for a quote-unquote insensitive job posting. They wrote that they were looking for a director of their museum who would not only work to attract a more diverse audience, but also to maintain its traditional core white audience.
What? What?
Best traditional white album, my favorite Grammy category.
Truly saying the quiet part out loud. And then, when called out on it, the museum's director and chief executive, Charles L. Venable, said that the decision to use white was intentional, but explained that it had been intended to indicate that the museum would not abandon its existing audience as part of its efforts to get more diversity. I deeply regret the choice of language. Clearly has not worked out to mirror our overall intention of building our core art audience by welcoming more people in the door. We were trying to be transparent about the fact that anybody who is going to apply for this job really needs to be committed to the DEI efforts in all parts of the museum. So
what's in this fucking museum? Okay. Is it like posters of Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Notebook or something? What is it?
Indianapolis Museum of Art. I have some questions. I love this because not only were they called out on this, they decided to apologize by doubling down. We meant that we want white people to still come to our museum, which is so funny to me because one, it implies that the whole conversation around it implies that one, black people don't go see art, and two, it implies that there aren't swaths of like art that are inspired by and created by black people in the first place.
Or also that white people aren't ravenously consuming black art and happy about it. Like
they love it. They love it.
That's their shit.
White people love going to see black art. So it is wild to assume that adding black art would turn people off.
I'm thinking about the kind of art Indianapolis has given us. I mean, Iowa had Grant Wood, American Gothic.
Okay.
You got your Thomas Hart Benton from Missouri, and then Indiana, I believe, gave us Jim Davis of Garfield. So if there's anything beyond that, I'm unfamiliar.
Lewis, that's canon. So watch yourself.
Yeah.
Watch yourself.
Okay.
Odie, Nirmal, Arlene.
Yes.
I mean, legendary discourse on the hatred of Mondays.
Right. No, essential. Lasagna.
Yeah.
You know what? Do you know why he picked lasagna, Jim Davis, for Garfield? Because it was easy to draw. Originally, he thought pizzas were too time-consuming to draw perfect circles and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, what a little cheat.
Wow. Okay. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this nonsense museum, but I do want to point out that this weekend I watched a documentary on HBO Max called Black Art in the Absence of Light, and it was basically about a history of, sort of like a neglect of black art centered around the 1976 exhibition, 2 Centuries of Black American Art, the first large-scale survey of black artists organized by David C. Driscoll, who was then the head of the art department at Fisk University. It basically included like over 200 works from the mid-18th to mid-20th century and caused like a lot of stir among museum types at the time because they were like, who's going to come see like this like entirely black exhibit? And then it ended up being one of the like largest exhibitions originated in America ever. Black people went to see it. White people went to see it. And the documentary sort of draws a line from all of these amazing artists, from like the people like the Basquiat's, the Kara Walkers, to all sorts of other artists, So like it's a great documentary to watch, and it's just a reminder that like the Indianapolis Art Museum is bullshit.
Bullshit, yeah. I too watched the documentary yesterday, and it was so nice to see because you don't know when you're going in. You're like, the documentaries lately have mostly been about like media and Hollywood. And it was just nice to see like African-American portraiture and what it takes to really capture Black people and put them on canvas. And, it was really beautiful and refreshing. And I also would recommend everybody watch it.
Yeah, it's also just like you get to watch a lot of artists talking about their work and talking about their intention in that work. In representing Black images. And there are different artists from each decade who are still with us talking about their intentions at that time and the responses to those and how they continue to work. And I think that is like one of the most beautiful things that I've seen. One of the most interesting parts about it too is this artist, Theaster Gates, who basically described if Blackness is sort of like the absence of light, as a color, it's like really about the work that you do when people aren't watching, you know? And so
love
this
that.
history of Black art has been ignored and neglected. And the reason it's so powerful is because artists are still working, even though they know that it's not getting that mainstream recognition, you know, from like fucking museums like the one in Indianapolis, you know? And it's about creating your own museums and our own avenues for people to, you know, take a look at the work that we do and to foster the work ourselves, you know? Like a really great thing about it too was like it dipped into people like Swizz Beatz and like Beyonce and Jay-Z like buying Black art, you know? Like even if they're like spending thousands of dollars on like a Basquiat, right? You know, they are placing value on art and Black art, you know, in a way that people haven't done traditionally.